When a cop shouted, "Put your hands down, bum," at a man holding a box outside a shelter, he had no idea he was talking to a war-hardened general. What happened next shook the city and redefined what justice looks like. He didn't walk. He stepped, with a stillness that carried weight, the kind of walk that said, "I've been here before, and I'm not here to ask for permission." General Marcus Ellis climbed out of his beat-up Dodge Charger like he was stepping off the pages of a military memoir. Deep Navy uniform, medals that had seen more dust and blood than any courtroom badge, and boots polished so sharp they could reflect your own guilt back at you. The air was cool, but the silence around him was warmer than what was coming. The moment his foot touched the concrete outside the veteran's shelter, the one he helped fund, by the way, the situation turned like milk left out in July. That's when he showed up. Officer number one. Young, white, swollen with training day bravado, and swaggering like his badge gave him divine judgment. "Put your hands down, bum," the cop shouted, loud enough to startle the pigeons off the power line. His mouth curled like he was looking at something rotten under his shoe. Marcus froze, not out of fear, please, but out of knowing. Knowing that in this country, no matter what your chest says, your skin speaks first. His right hand was still gripping the cardboard box filled with food and supplies, cans of soup, vitamins, some groceries, a care package for Sergeant Garrett, his old comrade, dying slow in room 2B. Marcus didn't move. Not yet. His breath caught in his throat like a lesson from an old wound. Speak too soon, move too fast, and suddenly it's not a traffic stop. It's a tragedy. "I said," the officer repeated, his cheeks pink from adrenaline, "put your hands down." "Officer," Marcus said, voice low, calm, but with that edge only earned in deserts and war zones. "I'm here on official business. Are you kidding me?" the cop barked. And just like that, he lunged. Before Marcus could finish his sentence, his arm was twisted behind his back. The box fell, crashing against the curb. Soup cans rolled across the pavement like dice, scattering apple slices and medical tape. Honor, once again, dumped out onto the street, same as it ever was. 2 minutes later, the General of the United States Army, a man who once stared down militants and delivered aid under sniper fire, was face down on the hood of a police cruiser, cuffed in public. No warning, no questions, just suspicion wrapped in a badge. Passers-by began to slow down. Phones came out. Some filmed, others averted their eyes like looking too long might make them guilty too. The young officer spoke into his radio, eyes on the computer mounted in his cruiser. His voice, less confident now. "So who the heck are you, huh?" he grumbled, typing furiously. "You got ID or something?" Marcus said nothing. He didn't need to. The system would speak for him. Eventually, the cop went pale. "General Ellis," he murmured, voice folding in on itself. Marcus turned his head slowly, not for theatrics, but to make sure the officer saw every line in his face, every year of service, every scar, every lost brother, every mistake that led up to this moment. You're him?" Crowd swelling now. Someone yells, "Let him go!" Another shouts, "That's General Ellis!" Phones were catching every angle. This wasn't a quiet mistake anymore. This was a headline waiting to explode. The young cop's partner showed up, older, been around, took one look at the laptop screen and his face lost all color. "You do realize who you just cuffed, don't you?" he hissed. The younger one stammered, I thought he was," but he didn't finish. Because saying it out loud meant admitting what we already knew, that all he saw was a black man with a box. That was enough. The older officer turned to Marcus. "Sir, But Marcus was already standing, cuffs off, brushing the dust off his sleeves like he was wiping away the humiliation. Only it doesn't wipe off that easy. "I'm here by invitation," he said. His voice was even, controlled, the kind of tone that made boot camp instructors stand straighter. "Delivering food and supplies to a dying veteran. One of yours, one of mine." He bent, picked up a can of soup and held it up like evidence. "Next time," he said, "try asking questions before you throw your weight around." A ripple of applause broke through the onlookers. Someone shouted his name, but Marcus didn't bask in it. Applause doesn't undo disrespect. He turned to the younger cop, who now looked like a kid caught stealing candy, frozen with guilt. "You've got a choice," Marcus said, quiet but cutting. "To do better, or to dig deeper. We'll see what you pick." Inside the shelter, the TV was no longer showing MASH reruns. It was now broadcasting live footage of the incident. Someone had already uploaded the video. Garrett, skin as thin as paper, voice like gravel in an empty can, looked from the screen to Marcus, then chuckled through a cough. "You again, huh? Always the storm center." Marcus dropped into the armchair beside him. "I don't choose the storm," he said. "It just keeps finding me." Garrett smiled, nodded toward the soup. "Heat that up, will you? Democracy's fine and all, but it don't fill your stomach." But Marcus couldn't shake it off. Not this time. He'd led missions where every wrong move meant someone didn't make it home. He'd stood between angry mobs and terrified children. But nothing, burned like standing on your own soil, in your own country, dressed in the ribbons they gave you, and still being treated like a threat. Because out here, no title shields you. Not from fear, not from ignorance. Because out here, even when you serve, you're still asked to prove you belong. And he knew this wasn't the end. It never is. What happened next? That changed everything. You won't want to miss how far this story goes when the system itself gets called to account. Stay tuned. It only gets more intense from here. By the time sunlight spilled across Manhattan's skyline, New York City was already awake, eyes wide and mouths running. The internet had done its job overnight. A 2-minute video had gone viral, showing a uniformed black man being slammed into a police cruiser while soup cans rolled across the ground like spilled dignity. The caption underneath was pure gasoline. "Homeless man with a box turns out to be a decorated general." That's how they put it. Because no matter how many medals you earn or how many battles you survive, the first story they write is always about the box. Comment sections exploded. One half screaming for justice, the other asking folks to wait for the full story, like the truth hadn't already been filmed from 3 angles and posted by a woman walking her dog. Like the truth hadn't clanked to the pavement with that can of chicken noodle. But Marcus Ellis, he wasn't watching clips or counting views. He didn't wake up to a news alert. He woke up to something deeper, an internal hum, sharp and electric, that soldiers never unlearn. The kind of feeling that says, brace yourself, another war's coming, but this one wears a tie and shakes hands before it strikes. He left the hotel in silence. No breakfast, no distractions, no medals today, just a dark tailored suit and the same hard eyes he wore during recon. The battlefield had changed, but not the mission. When he walked into the New York Police Department's headquarters that morning, he wasn't looking for an apology. He wasn't there to hear, "We're sorry." He came with questions, and he came to hold the door open for accountability to walk in, whether anyone liked it or not. But the first thing that greeted him wasn't justice. It was a receptionist who looked like she'd rather be checking her nails than checking credentials. "General Ellis," Marcus said calmly, adjusting his cufflink. "I had an appointment for 9. It's now 9:30. "Just a moment," she mumbled, eyes glued to her phone, like this was a dentist's office and not a city in crisis. Eventually, a tall figure emerged from a glass doorway. Inspector Thomas Brady. He had the kind of face that had seen 100 internal reviews and never learned a single lesson. His uniform was sharp, his handshake cold, and his voice was soaked in polished discomfort. "General," Brady said like the title tasted unfamiliar. "Thank you for your service." Marcus didn't smile. "Let's not pretend," he said. "I'm not here for gratitude." They entered a large office. Marble floors, clean walls, expensive furniture, but no empathy in sight, just bureaucracy with a badge. "We're investigating the incident," Brady offered, settling into a leather chair. "The officer involved has been temporarily suspended." Marcus sat across from him, straight-backed and sharp-eyed. "You suspended a man," he said, "but the problem isn't one man. It's the training that told him I was a threat before he even looked at my hands." Brady tensed. He'd expected complaints. Maybe a call for media attention. But not this. Not a man who had seen more combat than anyone in that building, dissecting systemic rot like a surgeon. "We have procedures," Brady replied carefully. "Protocols. This could have happened to anyone." Marcus let out a soft, grim laugh. "Anyone," he repeated. "If I were a white man in a business suit holding that same box, they'd ask if I needed help carrying it, not throw me into a cruiser. So don't insult me with anyone. You and I both know the truth has a type." Brady's expression wavered, the kind of silence that follows a truth too loud to ignore. "I'm not asking for the officer to be fired," Marcus continued. "I'm demanding you train better, not optional seminars, mandatory, structured programs, taught by people who've lived what I lived. You want your men to serve communities? Then teach them to see the communities first." Before Brady could answer, a quiet voice spoke from the doorway. "Excuse me, sir. May I say something?" They both turned. A young black officer stood there, barely in his mid-20s. His badge still shone like it hadn't seen a night shift yet. But his eyes, they were wide, awestruck, the way a child looks at a man whose story he memorized. "I studied your campaigns in Somalia," he said to Marcus, nervously stepping forward. "You were the reason I joined." Marcus stood, walked over, gripped his hand firmly. "You've got a chance to do more than I did," he said. "But first, see people, not silhouettes." The officer nodded, swallowing hard, then said, barely audible, "That officer, he never even looked you in the eye." Across town, the officer in question, Grant Rivers, sat under studio lights at a news station, flanked by a union lawyer. His collar was crisp, his voice rehearsed. "I didn't know who he was," Rivers said. "I followed protocol. I would have acted the same if it was anyone else." Back in the studio, Dr. Nathan Bell, professor of social equity, leaned into his mic with a dry smirk. "Anyone else always means the same thing," he said. "It means anyone who looks like him. That's not procedure. That's bias with a badge." Marcus didn't respond to the whirlwind of media requests. Calls flooded his phone. From the mayor's office, from city council members, even a senator or two. Some were supportive. Others asked the kind of question only people protected by the system could ever ask. "General, don't you think you might be overreacting?" Marcus didn't flinch. He wasn't overreacting. He was reacting to 30 years of being calm, of biting his tongue while his brothers got profiled, of sitting silent while policy pretended progress. He had carried the burden for decades. Now he was finally setting it down, loudly. That evening he returned to the hotel, still in his suit, but now carrying something heavier than pride. He picked up his phone and made a call. "Sergeant Willow," he said. "Sir, you okay?" The voice on the other end asked. "You told me you'd think about what's next after retirement." "I thought," Marcus said, "and I've decided." He looked out the window. The city blinked back. "I'm starting a program for officers on how to see the person before the uniform, or the hoodie, or the fear. You in?" There was a pause, then came the voice again, with more energy than a standing ovation. "Sir, I've been waiting for this call. Count me in. This is the moment, the one that flips the script. Everything you've been waiting for. It's right here. Stay with us, because the next step, it's where our hero makes the system listen." The press conference room inside City Hall wasn't just packed. It was charged, electric. Cameras blinked, lenses adjusted, microphones pointed like arrows waiting for a target. Reporters whispered, shuffled their notes, and prepped their headlines before the first word had even been spoken. They expected a show, but they weren't ready for what came through those double doors. Marcus Ellis walked in like he owned the gravity in the room, but he wasn't alone. To his left, Sergeant Willow, his longtime brother-in-arms, the one who'd crawled through desert sand with him. To his right, a young officer, the same one who once stood nervously in a police hallway and said, "I wanted to be like you, sir." And behind them, a silent battalion of black veterans, gray-haired, stone-faced, with eyes that had watched more history than textbooks ever dared to print. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Their presence was a sermon. The mayor looked up from his seat on the stage, adjusting his tie like the air had just gotten thicker. He expected something polite, maybe a few words about healing and moving forward. What he forgot, or maybe never understood, was that Marcus Ellis didn't do soft landings when the ground beneath him was already on fire. Marcus stepped to the podium. He didn't need to raise his voice. His presence did the work. "My name is Marcus Ellis," he said, his tone calm but heavy. "I'm a retired general of the United States Army. I served this country for 40 years. I bled in Iraq, led in Somalia, and buried brothers in Afghanistan. I've seen good men die, black, white, Latino, all wearing the same uniform, all fighting under the same flag." He paused. "But I come home, out of uniform, just a man with a box of groceries, and I'm a threat again. Just a bum with suspicious hands." The room went still. No clicking pens, no coughing, just silence and the kind of weight that hangs between unspoken truths. "If that can happen to me," Marcus continued, "what happens to the school teacher? The bus driver? The teenager walking home from practice?" Reporters looked up from their notepads. Some blinked back tears. Others stared like they'd just seen something ancient wake up. "I'm not here to demand someone's badge. I'm not interested in apologies dressed up as damage control. I'm here to demand something better. Systems, training, education. Because respect doesn't start with a badge or a gun. It starts when you teach people to see the human being standing in front of them before they see a profile." The next morning, deep inside the department's headquarters, there was no media, no cameras, just a room full of tense officers, a chalkboard, and the heavy hush of accountability. That's when Officer Grant Rivers stood up. Yes, that Rivers, the man who barked, "Put your hands down, bum," before checking IDs. He held a folded sheet of paper. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from realization. I want to file a request," he said, voice low but steady. "Transfer to the Community Outreach Division. I want to learn from the people I didn't know how to listen to. If you'll allow it, sir." He looked directly at Marcus. "I'd like to learn from you." No one moved. Marcus gave a single nod. Simple, quiet. But that nod echoed louder than any lecture. Because sometimes dignity doesn't need applause. It just needs a witness. What came next wasn't overnight magic. It wasn't transformation by hashtag. It was work. Real work. Hard work. Marcus launched a program called Human First. The concept was simple. Train officers like soldiers were trained in peacekeeping. Not to dominate, but to de-escalate. Not to suspect, but to observe. Not to assume, but to ask. Classes were taught by veterans who had faced not just battle, but bias, who knew what it meant to be both praised and profiled, often in the same day. At the first session, Marcus opened with no ceremony, no pleasantries. "I'm not here to blame you," he told the room. "I'm here to tell you that you can do better, but only if you want to." Over the weeks that followed, officers sat through real stories. They listened. Some folded their arms, others lowered their heads, but something shifted. 3 months later, a young officer named Carl, white, maybe 26, approached Marcus after class. "Sir," he said, a little hesitant, "I used to think racism meant burning crosses and Southern accents. But now I think about how I'd grip my radio when I saw a black kid in a hoodie walk past my cruiser. I never questioned it, just assumed something was coming." He looked Marcus in the eyes. "That's racism too, right?" Marcus didn't answer immediately. He just smiled. Software sad. "That's a start, Carl. The rest, that's up to you." One afternoon, as Marcus headed home, he stopped at the same veteran shelter where it all began. Inside, Sergeant Garrett still clung to life like a stubborn soldier on his last hill. He sat up slow, a blanket over his knees, that same old can of soup in hand, the one that had hit the pavement the day everything changed. "You really blew up, didn't you?" Garrett rasped, smirking. "You're a media star now." Marcus chuckled. "Better to be a star with a message than a shadow with regret." Garrett nodded. "Just don't let them turn you into a statue before you're done fighting." Online, the noise kept going. interviews, memes, debates on every channel. Some called Marcus the next doctor. Others called him just another troublemaker with a camera angle. He didn't respond to any of it because the real work was never in the comments. It was in the way training manuals started to change, in how departments across the country began asking for a copy of Human First. Not because it was trending, but because it worked. The world didn't need another symbol. It needed standards. Marcus stood alone in front of the memorial wall at the army base where he once trained. Names stretched across the granite like frozen echoes. One name near the center made his breath catch. His brother, 19 years old, shot during a traffic stop. Wrong turn, wrong color, no second chance. Marcus placed his hand gently on the engraving. "Too late for you, brother," he whispered, "but not for everyone else." He stood in silence. No camera, no headline, just him and a promise kept. As he turned to walk away, the sunlight caught something stitched on the shoulder of his jacket. A new patch, sharp and clear. Human First. Not a symbol, a standard.